Hello my dear friends, yesterday Teken 8 had its first ever major balance patch implemented, which is very interesting because, as you know, Teken 8 has had major balance issues since it was released. Now my overall impressions of the patch is that it didn't do nearly enough to take a serious step in the right direction for the game, but there are still some really cool things in here. And then we also had that promise of another balance patch next month that will be looking specifically at aggression and adjusting those situations where one opponent can just push indefinitely. Now they have to adjust that, and I've been saying this since before this game came out because, you know, the writing was on the wall. If you think that aggression is fun and you want to focus a game around it, it's a problem because when one character is pushing and attacking all the time, by definition the other player is blocking and doing nothing and being locked out, and it's why aggression as a major design directive for a Tekken game has been a failure for Namco, and I think that's what they're going to start backtracking on in this patch next month. And I'm going to make a separate video talking about why Aggressive Tekken just isn't a good idea for like a bunch of reasons. But let's talk about Zafina. Now this character was considered by most people the worst character in the game since the game came out, as though she needed some buffs, and yesterday she got some really interesting ones. It's not going to completely like revolutionize the character or anything, but they are still nice and they're going to help her a little bit. Or maybe in a big way. We'll see what happens. I've only been playing a couple of hours with the changes, but they are pretty cool and not at all what I expected. So the first major change that we should talk about is that you have a new optimal 10-frame block punisher now in 1.4. Now 1.4 has been an optimal block punisher for damage for Zafina since at least Tekken 7, but it was never used by anybody because the situation that it ends you up in here in Tarantula didn't have any strong uninterruptible options, which meant that if you were playing against a good player who knew that, you were kind of just exposing yourself and there was no real point in ever using this move. One cool thing about it that it still has is that the second hit, the kick, is a counter hit launcher. And now that you use this move a little bit more in your standard gameplay, you might actually see this counter hit happening a little bit. I'm just going to let you know quickly that before in the earlier game you had to spin with 1+2 from Tarantula, whereas now if you want to get a combo here, the best way of doing it is probably using Tarantula 2, and you can actually get full combo damage off of this. So this is pretty cool. Now when you hit with the Punisher normally, it's +22. Which might sound crazy, but it's not like you get anything uninterruptible, guaranteed, because you don't have like 10-frame moves from Tarantula. But you do get uninterruptible stuff. So the mix here is real, and now when you block punish with Zafina, you will go into the stance happily and you will perform a strong mix-up. 22 damage is sort of average, so a bit better than what you had before, which is going to help her overall. You know, you do this a couple of times in a round, and it can be a big difference just in damage. But now let's look at the mix-up. It isn't necessarily better than being in Scarecrow at +7, but it's still pretty good. The lows you have for your mix right here is you have the 1, which is your quicker, sort of slightly safer low. The cool thing about this is that it has counter hit properties and you can get follow-ups, so it's pretty nice. So that's one of the lows, and then the other low that you can use is the down 1+2. You're slightly more like damaging, you know, risky low. This is completely uninterruptible in the situation 1.4. So if you look at this, I'm +22 and I do a 25-frame low, so the opponent can't really do anything about this other than guess. It's a true mix-up situation a la Tekken 8 where they're locked down and the only thing they can do is guess whether they should block or crouch block, right? So that's the mix-up. When you hit with this thing, a down 4 is guaranteed. Whereas the down 1+2 option here is not, but it is still, you know, big. It gives you, you know, advantage and stuff, so it is pretty cool. All right, so those are the main lows in this situation, and then for your mid, you still have the 3, one of my favorite moves ever in Tekken. I think it's excellent, you know, thematic. It still breaks the floor in this game, which is pretty cool. So this knocks down and also gives you follow-ups, which is great. So it's a nice and fast, you know, 14-frame mid here. But I think the main mid you're going to be using for your mix in this situation right now is this other new and improved move that we're going to talk about next, the next major buff to the character, which is Tarantula down forward 1. So Tarantula down forward 1 has been made advantageous on block, whereas this was, I think, -7 before. It's been turned into +6, which is like a 13 frame improvement. It's crazy, right? It's a very, very big buff to this move. So it's also a completely uninterruptible, very strong like power mid that you're doing here. If it connects, you heat engage, which is very powerful. Obviously, you have the option of like, you know, heat dashing with this as well, although it doesn't give you a combo. I think back 3 is pretty much the best thing you can get when you heat dash out of this, which is a little bit sad. But then you get that massive +6 on block, which means that you can do this mix, and if you get blocked, you can mix again right away. And so you're building like, again, oppressive pressure with the character. And we're gonna talk more about another move later, but it really is like, like I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to make her as good as other characters at pressure, but isn't the problem right now that we have too much pressure, and aren't there more interesting ways of you know, buffing and improving weak characters? But you know, so you have this thing +6. Now let's talk about the +6 situation right here. As you can tell, there's a bit of pushback, which means that in a lot of situations your down forward one isn't going to reach. Sometimes it will. Sometimes it will. Like if I'm really close like this, you can make it like connect, but because of the pushback, even though you have advantage, the mix-up you have to do is you have to choose your moves kind of carefully so that you don't whiff and get whiff punished here. So what options do you have at +6 that are uninterruptible for mids? Not that many, really. I would say that your best option is probably, honestly, the 1+2. It isn't safe, but it has these extensions that keep the opponent guessing, right? And it's got massive range. So I would say, like, after this, if you want to mix with a mid, I'll use 1+2. And they can trade with jabs, but if they do, you still get the counter hit launch, because this is a counter hit launcher, right? And you still get the combo. So it's still a very advantageous trade for you. So that's a cool mid that you can use. I mean, if you need something uninterruptible and safe, you can do a down back too, which isn't, you know, all that powerful, but it's pretty cool. And then I think your opponent, because of the +6, is going to do a lot of hesitating here. So obviously you can just start mounting even more pressure, but that pressure just will be interruptible. So just be aware of that, right? There are things that they can do. They'll probably, you know, do this, to be honest, if you give them enough space to. So maybe, honestly, follow up with a dash throw and, you know, beat their armor or their reversal. Could be pretty cool. Yeah, so the mix-up situation here is solid, and I think the change to the Tarantula down forward one is going to make it so that you kind of want to be in Tarantula now. And it was definitely the least used of her stances in, unless you're legendary Zafina player Ren the Dragon, who basically spends all his time in Tarantula. It was barely ever used compared to Scarecrow, which is your best stance in this game, and Mantis, which is, you know, okay as well. So yeah, it's pretty great, and it's all built around like this pressure from Tarantula. Now, the next buff is also related to this Tarantula pressure package, and it's another one that's honestly kind of crazy. So you have this running move, which was new for her in this game, and I thought they wanted this to be like a major thing for her in this game, but it didn't really get used as anything other than a damage combo ender, which it is, you know, optimal and pretty good for. But it's slow, it's a duckable high, you know, you can move around it, you can float it, duck it, you know. But they made it just a lot better. First of all, they made it a homing move. So this is a homing move now, meaning that when Zafina runs in with this, there's no way to escape, literally, this running move. You can still obviously duck, which is the main weakness of the move. But, you know, it's interesting. You have all these, like, running mids that are some of the best moves in the game. And you're supposed to like sidestep and sidewalk them, but it's kind of too hard and too risky. And the highs just have homing properties now to make up for the flaw that they are highs. So this focus on pressure running moves, is it really what Tekken 8 needs right now? Like more running moves that create insane pressure, that lock down movement, that lock down the opponent? I mean, it's not what I was hoping for, but it is pretty strong and you will use it, right? So the thing about this move is that it's plus on block. So if we make my opponent block this here, you can tell that you get a +8 and Tarantula, so you essentially get the exact same mix-up, but even more advantageous that you got off of the 1-4 on hit. So it's really quite cool. If you hit with the move, the Tarantula down forward one just straight up becomes guaranteed, and it's actually really big damage, you know, 44, which is excellent. But then when you get the block, you can just, you know, go into Tarantula and you can do these powerful mixes. So yeah, I think it's pretty excellent, to be honest. Another buff to the move is that its impact speed is better. I think it used to impact at 24 and now it impacts at 20, and that 4-frame gap is going to make a big difference, especially against good players. You can now get it out fast enough that it's difficult for the opponent to react to and dunk. They still will be able to, especially if they're good, but it's just like, you know, it's like going to be more like ducking a Claudia running 2 or an Elisa running 2. Still very possible. Because she ends up in Tarantula after this, if you want to punish it, you have to wait a little bit and then punish it. You can get a float combo, so, you know, mid-40s for damage for most characters, so not bad. So yeah, pretty cool move. It's faster, it's homing, and it puts you in a stance that is really good now. So I think the most likely scenario that you will see when you're implementing this is you will try and get it blocked so you can access this Tarantula mix-up. So you're going from homing plus frames into, you know, uninterruptible, powerful plus frames right away. And I think the fact that this move has pushback, it's like, it's only mitigating factor. Otherwise it might be, you know, even too good. Remember that when Zafina is in heat, these down forward one claw moves also gain armor. So, you know, her in armor with this is going to be really quite scary. The final change, which like might seem like a minor one, but might end up being one of the best changes for the character, is major frame data buffs to your best low and one of the best lows in the game, or at least it used to be. I don't think you can consider this premium anymore now that we have stuff like, you know, Jin's down to and stuff like that. But it is still a move that every Zafina player uses in pretty much every match, and it's got a blanketed 3-frame improvement to its frame advantage on hit. So it used to be +2, I think, and now you get +5 on hit. And if you Mantis transition, you've gone from +4 to +7, which is great because, for example, with +7, this is uninterruptible and it's going to counter hit and launch them. So that's really great. You have, like, you know, other uninterruptible options from the stance that are mid. So yeah, I think this is a change that you're really going to feel. If you're on the receiving end of Zafina, you're gonna like why can't I beat her? Because she's doing all these down threes, right? So be very aware of the frame data change. Now, nothing has changed on block for this move. So it's still -15 if you don't transition, -13 if you do, which means that you still are weak in, for example, the Kazuya matchup, because he can launch this no matter whether or not you transition. He doesn't have to guess. He can just, you know, while standing twin pistons and you're cooked. Which illustrates an issue I have with Kazuya and 13 frame while standing launchers in general. You kind of have to, you get all of these weak, strong matchups, and you kind of have to balance lows around the fact that he has that. And I think it would make much more sense to balance his one move instead of all of these lows. And it should definitely be -14 at the fastest. But, you know, that's just a shitty opinion, and you know, who cares? So overall for Zafina, I mean, a couple of other minor changes. Scarecrow 4 is better off axis, stuff like that, which is going to be nice, especially at the wall, I think. But you are doing a lot more pressuring with the character right now. A big tip that I've noticed is that, you know, people are going to get used to this move quite quickly, so you need to mix it. Luckily, you have a strong mixing option in running 3, which is a mid, right? Also kind of too slow and kind of too risky, but now that you're mixing it with a high that is homing, the main weakness of this move being it's kind of slow and it's you know, very easy to move around. Now you have a really strong while running pressure package, and both moves are plus on block and put you in stance. I mean, this is +7 and Scarecrow, which is like arguably even better than, you know, +8 in Tarantula. So that's really cool, and Zafina is becoming now a character that specializes in closing the gap powerfully, because you still have the 4-4-4, you know, your standard safe sort of, you know, scuffed Demon Paw kind of a move. Obviously not a heat engager, but neither should Demon Paw be. And then you have the starfish, still, you know, classic, very powerful staple for her. And now she has these running moves as well. So she's very strong in closing the gap, and she's a lot stronger at building, you know, pressure. It's going to make her scarier at the wall. You know, the opponent's back is to the wall, you run up, you do this, and like if you hit with this mid, it's not only going to wall spot and do like massive damage, it's going to heat engage and enhance that combo or the Oki further. And I've been playing with the changes, like I said, for a couple of hours, and they're definitely noticeable. Is it like a, you know, a thing that's going to rocket her up the tier list? No, I think Zafina is still on the weaker side, but it is cool to see that she's getting stuff, and hopefully in this next patch in June, they'll give her some damage. If she ends up with some damage for her combos, I think the character is in a spot where you can now like main her with confidence. You're not maining, you know, a mid tier or a high tier or a top tier. You are maining a low tier, but she is rounded enough and complete enough in her design that you don't have to feel like you're just constantly playing, you know, with this massive disadvantage, which is great, which is kind of what you want, you know, from a balanced patch for an underpowered character. So cool changes. Let me know if you found something else. Maybe we'll look at some of the other changes in a different video, but I think the next thing I want to make is a video looking specifically at this idea of Teken 8 being aggressive and why it's probably led to the game being known for being so frustrating. I mean, I get really frustrated playing this game, and so do most people. Teken has always had an issue with that, but it's amplified to the extreme in Teken 8, and it just needs all of this constant pressure and this weakness of the defense, the weakness of blocking, the weakness of low parry, you know, the weakness of throw break looked at, so that we feel like we have options, and we feel more like, you know, taking an L is our fault and not, you know, the game's mechanics enabling someone who is worse than you to just win by overwhelming you with massive you know, APM, which is basically, you know, you have to have like uber micro to play this game like that. It's like StarCraft 2. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you guys again very soon.